claim. More than 4.9% of homes have only a landline telephone and no wireless phone. The sample data, a survey by the National Center for Health Statistics, showed that among 14,088 homes, 5.79% had landline phones without wireless phones. We're going to complete parts A and B. Now for part A, it says express the original claim in symbolic form. And then we're going to let the parameter represent a value with respect to homes that have only a landline telephone and no wireless phone. Okay, so let's take a look here. We want to take a look at the claim. So when you're looking at these problems, you always want to make sure that you see what the claim is, and we're going to highlight the claim, and that is the claim. Okay, so now we're going to look at that claim and then determine first and foremost what is the claim, and then what is the opposite of the claim. Okay, so here it says more than 4.9% of the homes have only a landline telephone and no wireless phone. Okay, so what it's saying here is that we have to decide whether we're dealing with a proportion, a mean, or a standard deviation. Now, the claim isn't saying anything about a mean. It's not saying anything about a standard deviation, but it is giving us a percentage which represents a proportion. So that 4.9%, okay, we want to rewrite that as a decimal, which is 0.049. Okay, and the reason why we want to write it as a decimal because it's telling us that we want to type an integer or a decimal. Okay, now what does the claim say? Well, the claim says more than 4.9%, and this is a proportion. So with the proportion, we are going to use, okay, since this tells us that we are testing a proportion. And so the symbol for proportion is P. Okay, and so now more than is what? Well, more than is just the greater than symbol. Okay, so more than just means greater than symbol, and that means the claim is that the proportion is going to be greater than 0.049. So let's go ahead and put in the claim, because that's what it's asking us to do. Express the claim in the original symbolic form. So this is going to represent part A. So we're going to put in the value of P, which represents the proportion. We know it says more than, so it's going to be greater than. And then we're going to put in that decimal of 0.049. Let's check our result, and there is our answer. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to identify the null in the alternative hypothesis. So in part B, we want to identify what is the null and what is the alternative hypothesis. Okay, now we have to then first, before we identify these two, we have to figure out what is the opposite of the claim. Well, the opposite of the claim would be that the proportion, well, what's the opposite of the greater than symbol? Well, it's less than, and since it's not greater than or equal to, the opposite is going to be the proportion which is less than or equal to 0.049. Okay, so now we're going to use this information to determine our null and alternative hypothesis. Now with the null hypothesis always contains the equality. And that's the equality symbol, meaning the equal sign. Okay, now if you notice here, the equal sign is not underneath the claim. The equal sign is underneath the opposite of the claim. So that means that we're going to say that this is going to be the null, which is always the equal sign, is going to be the proportion, which is equal to the value of 0.049. So therefore, since this has the equality, then that means that this claim is going to be the alternative hypothesis. So therefore, the claim is going to be the alternative where P is greater than 0.049. So let's go ahead and put our answer in here. So we know the null is going to be P, which is equal to 0.049. Let's go ahead and put that in there. So P is going to be equal to 0.049. Okay. And then the alternative hypothesis, okay, we know that's the alternative, and that's containing the claim here. So therefore, we're going to say that P is greater than 0.049. So we're going to put here P, use the greater than symbol, and then 0.049, and then let's press enter, and there is our result.